everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and with me today is Mr. Jake Keaton. Jake, how are you today?
Doing fine, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Jake, I hear people talk about how challenging certain fields are. Don't be a photographer, it's too competitive. Don't be an actor or a host, it's so competitive, you don't want to do that. I think every field is competitive. However, the field that you're in and the job that you have and the place that you work at, I feel is got to be one of the most competitive, because I think there's a finite amount of people that can actually do what you do. So where do you work and what do you do, first and foremost?
I work at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. I'm a senior policy advisor for the International Space Station program.
So how many people could do that job?
Well, there are 6 of us in my office, and I think we all do it at least equally well, if not better than I do. NASA is a large organization, as you might know. There's 18,000 civil servants, of which I am one. There's 60 or 70,000 contractors that do various jobs. They assemble the rockets, they build the satellites, they do a lot of our support work. And there's an old line from the Apollo program that said, I don't know if we could have went to the moon with fewer people, but I know we couldn't have done it with more. So we have the right number of people for the job, and this is how many people it takes to operate in space.
That is fascinating. I've never heard that quote, and it's absolutely brilliant. So the premise of this whole process and what I'm doing here is I like to find out how people got influenced to do what they do or become the people that they have become. A lot of people talk about social media and the influencers there, but I would argue that the influencers that we have every day are more important because they're hands-on. They say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it just takes a village, period, to get through life. How did you end up at NASA? Was it something that you saw when you were a kid? Like, I love airplanes. I mean, I think they're fascinating. Rocket ships, that's another level. Was it something that you were a kid, you're like, I'm going in, I want to work at NASA, I want to be an astronaut? Or was it something that happened as you progressed, and who would have given you the thought to be there?
It is a stereotype among the people who I work with. I saw Star Trek in 2nd grade, and just, I was all dinosaurs before that and the usual kid stuff. And then I saw Star Trek and I said, what is this? I need to learn more about this. And then I went and checked out, this was back in the days when you still check books out of the library and had the little cards in the back. And every single book in the library about NASA or about space, every single one in my elementary school library was checked out multiple times by me, and pretty much only me. I was the only getting that, but I read them over and over and learned about the Apollo program. And, this would have been the late 80s at this point. So the space shuttle program had already gone through Challenger, but was still, still the shuttle program was still learning what we could do in space. And so it was a very exciting time, to see these shuttle launches and things like that. And once I got a hold of that, then I wanted to be an astronaut, and that was set for middle school and elementary and middle school. And then I got to high school and found out that you couldn't be an astronaut if your eyes weren't good, which mine are not. And I kind of let that by the wayside. Turns out, of course, that's not true, not even a little bit, but I didn't know that. So I went to the next thing I thought was really cool, which was international relations. I wanted to go work for the State Department or the CIA or something like that. So I went to school in George Washington University in Washington, D.C. To study international affairs, international diplomacy. Got there, spent a year doing that. And my sophomore year, I had a professor who was involved. My sophomore year, I had a professor who was involved with NASA. He was an advisor. And I took the class because it was called space policy, and I didn't know there was such a thing as space policy. Who's ever heard of that, right?
Yeah,
it's all engineers and scientists, and that they're doing all the real work. But somebody's got to be on the other end making sure it happens. I never knew about it, and he got me an internship. I was 19, and I've been there ever since.
Unbelievable! What a fascinating turn of events. Going from I want to be an astronaut to I'm not going to be an astronaut, but you ended up at NASA anyway. And by the way, congratulations. I know we just sent SpaceX up not too long ago. That had to be absolutely thrilling for you as well.
It was thrilling, terrifying, inspiring. It was all of the rocket launches are always all of the emotions all at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, with the unfortunate events that happened when we were kids, I'm always a little nervous when I watch a rocket launch, especially when there's people aboard. we sat and watched it. We watched and missed or saw when they had to scrap the first day. Then we waited and we made sure we watched it on Saturday and grabbed all the kids. You guys were watching this because you've got to see this. It's historical, especially with the way that it went down and landing the booster back on the island. Fascinating stuff. Has there ever been something that you've seen while you've been at NASA where you're like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen?
I got to say, I don't want to harp for one company over another because we need them all, right?
Sure.
SpaceX has been doing, we're talking about SpaceX. They have been doing incredible things. And I think the most awe-inspiring moment of my career, to step back from that, I was out on one of the space shuttle launch pads. This would have been about 2009 or 2010. And they were getting ready to fly a mission to the Hubble, which was the only mission post 2003 that didn't go to the space station. It was going to the Hubble telescope. And in order to make sure, because the Hubble's not the space station, right? So if something goes wrong with the shuttle, there's nowhere for them to go. So we had to have another shuttle on the other launch pad. So I'm standing at the top of one launch pad over a shuttle, I believe it was Atlantis, looking 3 miles away, shuttle Endeavour's sitting over on the other launch pad. And the sun's going down. I'm up there with a former space shuttle commander who's telling me all about her missions and things like that. And it was just, there were 4 of us out there. It's nobody else was out there. There were 4 of us alone with 2 space shuttles. And it was just, I can't believe I'm here. This is not something anyone gets to do, and
right.
When I go into work next week and I'm writing some report that I don't care about, well, I'm going to write it.
Right. Well, I can only imagine how amazing those stories were. No reporters around. I'm sure there's a little bit more openness and more transparency when you're hearing some of these other stories around as well.
There sure are, and they're fascinating.
I
wish they were mine to share. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that would be so cool. So, if you were influenced by your professor, what are some of the ways that you've influenced others that have wanted to be in your shoes, or at least work at NASA? How has that worked out for you?
One of the things, this is a question we get a lot, as you might imagine, is mostly more, how do I become an astronaut? But we do have, because I'm in Washington, right, we do have other, and I say this with affection, other policy nerds who want to, who actually want to do this kind of thing, right? And what I would tell you, it's a difficult field to get into. I got lucky. I make no bones about that. I was in the right place at the right time, which can be important, but you can't count on that. And it's the same thing as becoming an astronaut. What you need to do is find what you like to do, right? So if you want to be an astronaut, we'll just go with that because that's more understandable. Don't base your entire career about being an astronaut. Go and become the best microbiologist on the planet. Go and become the best physicist on the planet. Go and become the best pilot on the planet. Go be the best at something, right? And whatever it is you're passionate at, because that's one of the things that drives you to be the best, is because you're passionate about it. Just being an astronaut is not something, it's not a profession, right? Each astronaut was something else before they were an astronaut. They were a medical doctor, they were a physicist, they were an expeditionary scientist in the Antarctic, and they were the best at what they did, and that's how they got where they were. And then you have the secondary benefit. If you don't become an astronaut, you're still doing what you love.
Right.
So it's,
what I'm hearing, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, anyone who just sets their entire goal as becoming an astronaut, I don't think it ever happens.
Right. So what I'm hearing is they take the best of the best and then make them astronauts. Because we need
that's exactly
you.
Right.
We need you at the space station, and you're the best. You're going to learn how to pilot this, and we're going to bring you up into space.
Right. And it's changed a lot since the 1960s when they were all test pilots. They were the best test pilots that there were, right? Well, we don't do a whole lot of flying manually anymore. The spaceships have gotten a lot, obviously we're in a whole different world than the Mercury program.
Right.
So now it's, we still do have the military test pilots. They do still exist, right? And one of them is our space station commander right now, and he is excellent. But earlier this year, we had 2 women on board, both of whom were expeditionary scientists. One studied in Antarctica, one was on a research ship, and they were both absolutely fabulous as well. And that's the direction the Corps is going, right? Because it's not so much about beating the Soviets anymore. It's about doing research and finding out what's out there and figuring out how we can apply that back, to the planet Earth.
There's a lot of saying, and you said find out what's out there. There's still some people that believe we haven't discovered everything that's on Earth, especially if you go to the bottoms of the ocean. What kind of contrast do you see in that? Because man, I want to know what's out there. I don't necessarily want to go to the bottom of the ocean. I'm not the best swimmer. I'll be the first one to admit it. But space is fascinating.
The thing is, if we hadn't gone to the moon, I I don't think anybody in this country would be smarter. I don't think anybody in this country would be less hungry, and no one would have a broader perspective because we didn't do that, right? And in the grand scheme of things, how much money was it? It was expensive. It absolutely was expensive, and it still is. But in the grand scheme of the federal budget, it's minuscule. It is absolutely minuscule. If you dissolve NASA today, you're not going to solve world hunger tomorrow. That's not the way it works, right? And so what we can do is continue providing, I don't normally make this case to policymakers, but the inspiration is there. You want the best scientists in the world, well, grow them here in the United States, right? That's what we're kind of about. And if they become astronauts like we were talking about, great. If they don't, well, we still have the best scientists, right? And we could certainly use them right now.
Right.
And I think the world is looking towards us for that kind of leadership. I think that's where the investment is.
Fascinating stuff. I also have to ask, how many people approach you and go, okay, did we really go to the moon, or was that a hoax?
I think Buzz Aldrin answered for all of us when he punched that guy.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure you got tired of hearing that question. I can only imagine that got old really fast.
This does come up, and I would say, think about how many people worked on the Apollo program. Do you really think the United States government can maintain a secret that big for that long? It would have been easier to go to the moon than it would have been to cover it up. So.
Absolutely, and brilliant point, because I don't think 3 people can keep a secret, let alone how many people it took to
410,000. Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's so fascinating to me. Well, let's dial it back to when you were a kid. You went to go see Star Trek. I had the similar experience when I saw Star Wars the first time, because I never would have even thought to think about something being out there. Like, really? Like, is this a possibility? And it blew my mind. So I have to say, you've chosen Star Trek over Star Wars, right?
It's funny. I'm obviously a Star Trek guy. That is not unanimous in my profession, for sure. Plenty of people love Star Wars. I love Star Wars too. I think Star Trek inspired me most because, okay, so they're both fantasy, right? They're both totally made up. None of that exists. Warp drive doesn't exist. Hyperspace doesn't exist.
I wish it did. Oh, I wish it did.
Oh, tell me about it. My job would be a lot easier. But Star Trek, there's always a nod towards, well, there's a reason this works. There's a scientific reason behind this. Star Wars, it's fantasy, right? Which is fun. Who cares why the spaceships fly? They just do. That's not the point of the show. And Star Trek, I think what really did it for me is that the Enterprise is a meritocracy. Starfleet is a meritocracy, right? Captain Kirk is captain of the Enterprise because he's the best at what he does. Luke Skywalker is a Jedi because he was born to be that. His father was a Jedi, and he was destined for that, which is fun. The hero's journey is fun. Don't get me wrong. But for inspiring me as a career, if I'm the best, I could work on the Enterprise, it has nothing to do with who my father is.
Right.
That was very inspiring to me. And just this organization that is out there, that is exploring the universe for peaceful means, it really did it for me. And after, it was actually Star Trek II that I saw, which is a great movie, but it was The Next Generation with Patrick Stewart and that whole crowd. That was really what I watched as a kid. And that was the real utopian, wow, we could get there someday, kind of thing.
That is another inspirational or influential part in how you got to be where you are. Jake, I really appreciate your time today. One last question. Is there life out in space somewhere?
No question in my mind.
I agree with you.
As one of my other influencers, Carl Sagan, said, if we were all alone, it would be an awful waste of space.
I was going to say, as big as the galaxy is, how can we be the only thing here?
With the number of planets, I'll just say this, with the number of planets we have found today, and this is something that wasn't true when you and I were in elementary school. We didn't know, we assumed there were other planets out there, we didn't know it. Now we know there are thousands of them, and we've discovered thousands of planets, thousands of Earth-sized planets around these stars. And if you do the statistics, it's something like there's possibly 1 trillion planet Earths in the Milky Way galaxy. And I might have that number wrong, but it's a very, 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 very large number. And the Milky Way galaxy is one of hundreds of billions of galaxies. We don't even have names for the kind of numbers of how many planets there are out there. So do I think is ET visiting us now? No. Is ET out there? There's no question in my mind.
Amazing. Just completely blown away right now. I love it. I love it. Jake, thank you so much for your time again, man. This is
Happy
um,
to.
super, super special. I know you always have a lot going on and you're a very busy man, but taking the time to do this has been so cool for me. So I appreciate it. If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure you subscribe and also go to Apple Podcasts because you can listen to it there as well. Jake, enjoy the rest of your day, buddy. And hopefully
All right,
I'll
thank
look
you. You
forward
too.
to speaking with you soon, okay?
Certainly.
See ya.
Bye.